members absent this evening, Commissioners Anderson and Karas, due to business commitments they had this evening. So we do have a quorum in order to proceed. From city staff this evening, we have Kathy Zerniak, who is Director of Community Development. And so we will proceed according to the agenda. We have two items on the agenda tonight. The first one being an information and opening of a public hearing pertaining to, excuse me, a planned preservation subdivision in the Oak Knoll Woodlands area. I'd like to emphasize that at tonight's meeting, the Commission will hear just an introduction of the Oak Knoll Woodlands petition. The Commission will not take any action or make any decisions on this petition at this meeting this evening. My expectation is that in the weeks following tonight's meeting, the petitioner and city staff will conduct additional research, respond to any comments, public testimony, or any questions raised, make refinements to the plan if appropriate, and provide additional information as needed to city staff. I do not expect by any stretch that all of our questions are going to be answered here this evening. So at this point, I would ask of the commissioners whether or not any members have any ex-party contacts or conflicts of interest on this matter before us. No. Seeing none, we will proceed. For those of you who wish to testify, would you please raise your hand and stand, please? I'd like to swear you in. Do you solemnly declare and affirm that the testimony you are about to give is true and correct to the best of your knowledge? I do. Thank you very much. Okay. Now, we've had some requests from legal representatives, attorneys in this matter, to have some extended time for public testimony on this matter. We want to give everybody a reasonable opportunity to be heard. In an effort to assure that all parties have an equal opportunity to be heard, the Commission has adopted in the past, even before tonight's meeting, procedures which are printed in the agenda. We always ask for voluntary compliance with the procedures out of respect for all parties. The procedures allow 5 minutes per speaker. And as I said, several neighbors are represented tonight by an attorney and a planning consultant. Those individuals have asked for and will be given additional time to speak. We do ask all those speaking to please keep your comments concise, and if your thoughts have already been covered by others, simply stating your agreement with previous speakers would be appreciated. And then after public testimony, those who have submitted forms, and we have 4 of them, requesting opportunity to cross-examine will be invited to the podium. The person to whom the question is being directed should be identified, and the question should be posed clearly to that person that you will be cross-examining. Okay? Any questions on what I just said? Okay. We've got registration slips, so what I will do is announce who will come up first, and then I will always, as the public testimony proceeds, I will let you know who's on deck next. But our first person to open the hearing is the petitioner. Petitioner is represented by Mr. Swanson. Are you the person who will be making the presentation this evening?
Yes.
Okay. Please come to the podium.
I would have Mark Arden make an initial introduction.
All right, thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Mark Iden. I'm the attorney for the developer on this project. Just to give you a very brief summary of what we're requesting, we would like the 30-acre parcel, I'm sure you're all familiar with the location. If not, Rick will walk you through it. To rezone the property from R5 to R4. The second request is to apply a secondary zoning district or an overlay for the historic residential and open space preservation district. After that, we're seeking a planned unit development, which in this case is a planned preservation subdivision with the historic residential and open space preservation provisions made applicable to it. And finally, we're looking for a tentative plat approval when we're done with these proceedings. I agree with the chairman's initial statement that this would be primarily informational. We're working hard tonight to keep our presentation concise. We'd like to keep it within the 20-minute limitation. We're trying to focus more on public and plan commission comments so we can make any tailoring or changes to our plan that can be made. We would then like to take all those responses, as you stated, meet with staff, take whatever action we can to improve the plan, and then come back to you and report. One thing, given the 20-minute limitation, we had decided not to present legal arguments tonight that are contained in the petition. I know there may be others here who would like to. I don't think that time is really available so that we can get our presentation on, show you the project, and then get the appropriate reaction. So I'd like to reserve that right to make those arguments if they're needed at the next meeting. Okay, thank you. Now,
We will probably continue this public hearing.
yes, yeah. I anticipate that when we come back next time, we will have taken the input that we received from you and the public, tried to do what we can with it and provide a cogent and concise reason how we are addressing the various comments. We want to categorize them and address them. Then if legal arguments are necessary to be made in public beyond the application, I'd like to reserve that right, but not until the next meeting. As we understand it, we're going to lay it all out for everybody so they can make comments, and then we'll come back and address all of that.
Very good.
I'd like to introduce Rick Swanson now, who's going to walk you through the project.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the Plan Commission. If I may, I'd like to just hopefully, there we go. There we go. That's what I was looking for. Thank you, whoever said that. All right. As previously stated, Mr. Chairman, my name is Rick Swanson, for the record. I'm a managing member of Swanson Development, LLC. We are located here in Lake Forest. I'm also a member of High Road Development, LLC, and my partners are with me here tonight. I would add that I also have my consultants with me from Hay and Associates for wetlands, Mike Black with Black Engineering, who I know you're familiar with, and I have representatives from KOLA. Russ, I forgot your last name. See, I knew there was a Russell in there somewhere. Anyway, we've got representatives from our traffic study consultant in the event that members of the Plan Commission wish to ask questions relating to that. And hopefully this will cooperate. Qualified site information. The site is a total of 29.67 acres. There are a total of 5.26 acres of wetlands and floodplain. Our proposed development will relocate 1.59 acres of these wetlands on site and add 4.39 acres of new wetlands to the existing high-quality habitat. There is an existing man-made pond on the property which will be preserved and enhanced. Other than its aesthetic quality, it provides no current stormwater relief. A new 2.96 acre detention pond will be constructed within the proposed enhanced wetland to create a more natural and aesthetically pleasing result. 54 acres of off-site drainage historically flow through our property to the northeast onto the Conway golf course. The historic drainage pattern will not be altered. We have retained Urban Forest Management, who has tagged all the trees and identified the size, species, and quality of each. A total of 10.23 acres will be impacted by our proposed development. We have met with neighbors on Stablewood Lane and received generally positive feedback. We've reached out to our Oak Knoll and Abington Cams neighbors with only one response, which I'm pleased to report is supportive. We have also met with the Asfors, who are the recent buyers of the house that is on the property. It's a separate lot, and we've been working proactively with them on a number of what, as you can imagine, common area issues. To get you familiar with the site, we are basically at the very north end of Oak Knoll Drive. We are adjacent to Stablewood Lane, which runs along our west and our north boundary. We have the Conway Golf Course, of course, basically surrounding all of that, and then naturally the railroad tracks to the east with the high school campus on the other side. Again, repeating basically what I just said, except with a little closer view, the Asfor residence is really basically surrounded by our property. And as I pointed out, you can see at the very, oops, I don't know why they did that. Kathy, is there a laser on here? There we go, okay. Oak Knoll terminates right here, and then Abington Lane, or Abington Cams Lane, is right through here. And then, of course, as described, Stablewood Lane runs the west and north. It's a private road, the north and west portion of the property. It's a little bit more articulate plan of the defined wetlands. We have a very high-quality wetland running through here. There's a higher portion of land here, higher portion of land here. There are some upland wetlands that will be mitigated on site within our property. There is a mature tree stand that runs right through this area right here with a spattering of trees throughout. And frankly, the site is currently dominated by invasive species like buckthorn, which is not uncommon for a site that's been left untouched for this period of time. To put a more simplified exhibit together, we basically wanted to show how the basic drainage runs through the site. As you can see, our off-site drainage runs onto our property from both the west and from the south. It's typically filtered through our wetlands right now, and it ultimately feeds out into a wetland behind the Conway Golf Course. Project objectives. We seek to develop a well-planned neighborhood of cohesive and aesthetically appropriate homes that are of the site as opposed to on the site. This will be accomplished using the R4 density, which is the designation suggested in the city's comp plan. Over the last 20 years, the City of Lake Forest has been instrumental in establishing aesthetic standards for housing mass and scale other communities have now adopted. The city has also historically embraced and even encouraged the preservation of open space through creative planning. We propose the conservation method of cluster development, meaning smaller lots with more open space. This method has worked incredibly well and established in other developments like Everett Farms and Middle Fork developments. Our goal is to create a neighborhood that is respectful of the natural features of the site and not another formulaic cookie-cutter development. Our proposal is to, as I previously stated, we have a total of 29.67 acres. And our property literally goes around the Asfor residence here and then all the way around and through like so. Total impacted area will be 10.23 acres, and that impacted area we actually staked is this area, obviously, through here. The total preserved open space will be a total of 19.44 acres. That will be 65% of the site that will be preserved and enhanced, which is in line with Middle Fork and Everett Farms, which are in the neighborhood of 65 to 70%. The average proposed lot size will be 21,200 square feet. We do have some lots that go as high as 24,000, and we have no lots will be less than 20,000 square feet. The average home size, based on the city's bulk ordinance, will be 4,200 square feet. The existing wetlands are to be expanded and enhanced. The existing pond will be preserved and maintained, and that would be this pond right up in here. Architectural design will be by us. We're not going to just sell off the lots and to builders. This will be a project that we will control from soup to nuts. Landscaping will be controlled to allow naturally flowing streetscape. We're actually working with Hay & Associates and Stephen Christie as our landscape architects, both of whom I'm sure you're familiar with, to really create a cohesive development streetscape. Walking trails will be constructed around the project, and those trails currently are proposed to go, we can actually see it here, will go in and around the pond and around and through, and frankly, just around the property. How that trail will be developed and where it will be is certainly something that will be adjusted as this process moves on, but we do intend to have a trail, which actually serves two purposes. It's obviously a nice thing to walk on, but it's also, it gives us easy access for maintenance of the wetlands and pond areas. This is a view of the site if you were standing on Oak Knoll looking north at the termination point into our property. You'll note that there's a cul-de-sac here. It does not have an island in the middle, which suggests that at some point there was a plan long ago to connect into this property. These are just typical photos of the site. They're fairly similar in nature. You'll see that there's a lot of buckthorn on the property, and we do have mature trees in the background. And actually, this view is from the Asforce property looking east and south. This is another view. Again, many of them very similar. And then this is a view of the pond, the existing pond I referenced earlier. It's in need of work. It's shallow. It does have lily pads and so forth. It has issues. We will work with the Asforce through this process, but the net of that will be that it will be maintained. It'll be enhanced. It'll be improved. This is a picture of the Asforce house. Again, as I pointed out earlier, we will be working with them on some of the issues that they've inherited as a result of the acquisition of that home. These are examples of conservation development in Lake Forest. The photo you see here is Everett Farm from the preserve. This is a view. These photos were taken 15 years ago. I couldn't take photos today because there's so many trees in there now. You really can't see the houses or any of the things that I'm showing you here. But these homes were built back 15 years ago, and if I were to take the photograph today, you couldn't see anything but maybe a couple of appendages here. But this does show you how the houses would relate to each other in terms of their mass and scale. Examples of the types of houses, they're not these specific houses, but they'll be this size and generally this character, traditional in character, historically correct. In this case, it's a shingle style. Again, the shingle style. We will have, when I talk about the architecture, all I could tell you, and I've worked with some of you on a number of projects on other boards, we will be very careful to make sure that the detailing is tasteful and as I pointed out, historically correct, and most importantly, that it meets the city's bulk ordinance requirements. In closing, I just want to state some relevant facts. Our site is downstream from all adjacent properties west and south of our property. So we're receiving water. It goes to us. We receive it. We accept it. We deal with it, and it goes from us. Our water doesn't go to them. It goes to us. All engineering will be designed to accommodate on-site and upstream off-site stormwater drainage. A traffic study has been completed and reflects a relatively minimal impact on access and flow of existing roadways, and we're not surprised by that. A jurisdictional determination has been completed, and all wetland related review will be by Lake County Stormwater Management and not by the Corps of Engineers. We've met with Lake County Stormwater Management, and they are supportive of our wetland restoration and enhancement proposal. But I will tell you that we still have much work to do, and they still have to review anything that we do. Conservation development is a proven method of planning and has worked with great success on other similar projects within our community. Historical data confirms the homes in conservation plan neighborhoods have more value of those in more conventional subdivisions. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I'm going to end my presentation. I did watch the presentation on Monday. I want to be respectful of the fact that you want to get out of here before 11 o'clock tonight. We look forward to addressing any comments from the board and from the audience tonight. And we look forward to working with you to come to a plan that everyone can be comfortable with. So I thank you.
Does that conclude petitioner's presentation?
It does, sir.
Okay, thank you. We will then move to the identification of issues by staff.
Thank you, Chairman Lay. Because this project, this petition is before you tonight for an introduction, staff is not prepared to provide a full evaluation or analysis or recommendation of this petition. I did want to cover three things. One, to provide just a little bit of history on this property, to talk about the zoning, and to talk about the overlay district. The history of the property: this 30-acre parcel has been in the ownership of a single family for many years. So the areas around it have developed. This property has stayed intact. The irregular shaped parcel carved out of the middle was actually carved out for a family member. And that member actually built this house within the last 15 years to replace an existing house that was there. So it didn't go through a subdivision process. It all remained in the same ownership. The zoning on this property is R5. R5 carries with it a minimum lot size of 3 acres. R5 is the zoning district, essentially the default zoning district. When properties are annexed to the city and there's no development planned for those properties, the R5 zoning district is applied. This property was annexed in conjunction with the entire Conway Farms development. Conway Farms was planned for development. An appropriate zoning district was applied at the time the development plan was approved. The owners of this property had no interest in development, so the R5 was just attached to it. Given that the entire area around it has developed, that there are city services available, reclassification of this property to the R4 zoning is reasonable. The request before you is also to apply the historic residential open space preservation district to this property. In the 80s, when the city was experiencing a tremendous amount of development activity on the west side in the 70s and 80s, the community paused and stepped back and was concerned that subdivisions were developing in a very routine way, in a very conventional way, that they were impacting significant stands of trees, significant wetlands, and that they weren't necessarily emulating the character of the unique character of Lake Forest. So in the 80s, the City Council did approve this overlay district, and what the overlay district does is that it allows flexibility for the developer, allows flexibility for the Plan Commission and City Council, and encourages creativity. The purpose of the overlay district is to preserve natural resources or historic resources. The overlay district requires that the underlying density of the zoning district be respected, but allows the minimum lot size, setbacks, road widths, various elements to be modified in exchange for preservation of either historic resources or natural resources. That is what is being requested here. I just wanted to provide that background, and with that, our intent is to hear your questions tonight. We're not prepared to answer them. We will certainly record all of them, questions, issues, requests for additional information. We will then work at the staff level, request of the petitioner, assistance in getting those responses, any refinements to the plan, and bring it back before you for a continued public hearing. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. I have one question. Is Attorney Kingsley here?
Yes, I am.
My question is this: can you identify your clients so that we might group them as part of the time that you've requested?
Yes, Mr. Krakauer, our planner, is going to make the presentation on behalf of the clients. We represent 5 or 6 people who are in the audience tonight through the Sunburg. Mr. Szymanski is here.
Okay.
Ms. Montelius.
Okay. Because as they come up, I will then be,
And the idea is to make again, Mr. Krakauer, our planner, is going to make a kind of consolidated presentation that involves both the statements of the neighbors and his analysis.
would you like him to proceed first, or do you want to hear, should I just take them in the order of?
If you would allow us to proceed with the consolidated presentation, I would appreciate that.
All right, let's do that.
And I just, Mr. Iden talked about reserving legal arguments for other days. I want to make that same.
If you're going to comment, you need to come up to the microphone since this is recorded. Thank you.
Mr. Iden made comments about reserving legal arguments for other meetings or other situations that are more appropriate, and I would just like to do the same with respect to that.
So noted.
Thank you.
Yep.
Chairman, just give me 1 moment. Are we ready?
Please proceed.
Thank you. My name is Alan Krakauer. I am a urban planner and zoning consultant. I'm also a licensed landscape architect in the state of Illinois. I'm the president of Krakauer and Associates. We're located in Lake Bluff. I live near Lake Forest. Krakauer and Associates is a firm I founded over 40 years ago. I was asked to give you just a few of my credentials, if you'd like to have them, so you know who I am. Essentially, in my career, I've planned somewhere over 300,000 acres of land of every type. I'm a frequent lecturer at continuing legal education. I lecture on planning and zoning, eminent domain litigation, and I also lecture frequently at various professional planning organizations. Our clients are public and private, many municipalities. I have presented my credentials and testified as an expert in planning and zoning in all the trial courts of northeastern Illinois and in Lake County on numerous occasions. I have a Bachelor of Science and Master of Science degree. And lastly, before my tenure with Krakauer, I served as a special assistant to the regional administrator of the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development. I'm going through some of the slides of the residents, and we'll get back to those later. My testimony is really rather limited, and I'm going to cover a few significant factors. We've had some difficulty getting the information we needed to review because a lot of it appears to be in a preliminary format. Nonetheless, I proceeded. I'm going to touch very briefly on what's called environmental corridors, And why I am doing that is very simple. The subject property, as you saw in the initial presentation, is a very environmentally sensitive property. But it's a small piece of property, and it's part of a much larger environmental system. So anything that happens to that property affects the entire system. Secondly, I'm spending most of my time on the site plan that you saw, the density of the plan, how that density originated, whether it's legitimate or otherwise, the lot size. Lastly, I'm going to touch on public safety, the zoning factors in terms of ingress and egress. The first slide is a map that comes from the Lake County Stormwater Management Agency. That's the agency from which you adopted your stormwater management plan. And I'm showing it to you for a variety of reasons. First, the subject property is right in this area here. It is part of the middle fork of the north branch of the Chicago River. So that's a huge drainage shed. Within that drainage shed are smaller drainage sheds. All of the property that is south, all of the homes south of the subject property, drain into the subject property. And we're looking at a little larger overlay. This is the FEMA map, where the subject property is outlined right here. The very dark patterns are wetlands. The bluish pattern is mostly floodplain. And if you look closely at it, and I know you can't see it, there's a number 665. And that's a pretty important number, because what that's really telling us topographically is that all of the land from the subject property north into the Conway Golf Course is very low. This water, the subject property takes the water from the southern subdivisions, they drain into it, then that water drains northerly, and it can also come back southerly because it's a very low level area. What we learned is that the Conway Golf Course has drain tiles, and some of those drain tiles also come into these low areas. The point, the takeaway on this, is that when the environment in the subject property is disrupted, whether it be the addition of a large detention pond, when the wetlands are filled in, even though they're mitigated, all of that changes a very delicate ecological system. And we don't have any information from the developer at this point to understand exactly what he's doing on an engineering basis. But we are able, at this stage, to make this recommendation. Before any zoning can even take place or be considered, there has to be an area-wide drainage study, but not the typical study that civil engineers do. It has to be a study that looks at all the detailed drainage patterns that flow into and out of the subject property. There has to be an evaluation of these homes. What you'll see tonight or whenever you convene again is the residents have a tremendous amount of flooding on their properties. And it's not that they weren't designed properly, it's the way that kind of subdivision was done some years ago. So some of their water flows overland, it almost looks like rivers. Some of it flows underground, but it all has one thing in common. All of that water flows to the subject property. And that's why the residents are so deeply concerned about the impact that the changes in the environment will have on the subject property. It's a very critical issue. And lastly, I think the reason why everybody is here and concerned is they want to have the assurance that when this development is done, that property will continue to adequately take the floodwaters that emanate from their property. And certainly, anybody who lives in Lake Forest, near Lake Forest, Lake County, Illinois, has seen what happens with our flooding. Everything is designed to this so-called 100-year flood event. And none of us in this room, I don't think, have lived 100 years, but I can tell you all of us have seen numerous 100-year flood events. Many of the designs we're using, even in the stormwater management ordinance, do not work any longer. Now I want to get into the guts of what I really have to say. This is a site plan. It's a study plan. It's a conventional plan that was presented to the city staff. And the purpose of the plan, as I understand it, was to attempt to justify the fact that 17 lots could be developed on this property in a conventional manner. And then from that, the applicant was then able to say, if I can get 17 lots here, I should be entitled to have 17 lots on my other property in a cluster format, which is really not a cluster format. But there's something actually missing from this plan when you look at it. It has 17 lots, it has one way in and out, but the guts of the plan aren't there. This is what is missing from this plan. And all I've done is superimpose the wetlands, and these are the wetlands from the developer's own engineer, from Hay and Associates. The floodplains are on here. This is the floodplain that comes from FEMA, also from the developer. And if you look at this plan, you realize that in order to develop something like this, you'd have to do some very substantial mitigation of wetlands, adjustments in floodplain, adjustments in the road layout. And although we might hear, and we normally hear in zoning hearings, because I've said it myself, although we can engineer these plans, and although the Lake County Stormwater Management Agency might approve these plans, this is poor planning. There is no contemporary community that I know of with a planning process that would ever approve a plan like this. So at best, it's my opinion that when we look at this plan, it does not justify 17 lots. You might get, I think I counted 5, 6, 7 lots if you're lucky. But the goal of conservation preservation is the word preservation. It is not disruption. It's not altering. It's not modifying. So in my 40-some years of planning, if I've learned anything about flooding, it's that we preserve the natural environment. We don't keep tampering with it, because every time we do that, we have significant adverse impacts to the environment. This is the land plan you saw earlier. It does have 17 lots. It does have one way in and out. And if you look at the very right-hand side of this plan, it has a very large detention basin. It has some mitigated wetlands. This wetland in here is considered a very high-quality wetland. And although this is referred to as cluster development, this is not cluster development. This is a subdivision with 2 cul-de-sacs. Cluster development is a development that has clusters of housing with vast open space or natural amenities wrapped around the clusters. I think any land planner knows that. And the reason we do that is the preservation of open space, and also to take the smaller lots and to make them have a sense of a larger open area. So I believe we're looking at a subdivision. But here again, there's another significant issue on this plan. And you saw a very pretty colored site plan. I don't have the pretty site plan. But what's missing here is this. I did the same thing. I took the wetlands from the developer. I took his floodplain and the adjacent floodplains. And this is really what you're talking about. You have a whole bunch of small lots in a subdivision. Some of them are covered by wetlands. It's their intention to eliminate those wetlands. They're going to have to dig a tremendous amount of earth to get this development in here. And later on, I'm going to show you the problem with that detention pond next to all of these homes. It's a pretty big-time issue. So in order to develop this land in this manner that you see here, there has to be a tremendous disruption to the natural environment. We have wetlands and we have floodplains for a reason. They're natural resources. They are best left alone. And it is true that once in a while, we can take a wetland and mitigate it. It is true that we can make adjustments to floodplains. But wetlands are facilities that help purify the water. You heard the developer tonight talk about the water coming through the wetlands being purified, then flowing north. They do that. But when they're taken away, they can no longer do that. The water goes into the aquifer in that manner. It goes into the floodplain, it's purified, and it goes back down in the water table. That's how we regenerate our water supply. So here, if you look at this plan and you did it realistically, you'd probably have about half the number of lots that you could squeeze in. You can't even get the road in here. I circled the detention pond, or a part of it, because that pond is probably, and again, we couldn't measure it. We don't have drawings that were given to us of a full scale. So we had to work with little drawings. They're 15, 30 feet away from all of these homes. When that overflows, and all detention ponds overflow, when this thing overflows, all of these people are affected. And you'll see from some of the residents tonight who live right in here and over in here, they have a tremendous amount of water that flows through their property because it comes from the south and goes northerly. I don't believe that.
Mr. Krakauer?
Yes?
You're about halfway through your half-hour presentation.
I'm going to make it.
Good. I mean, and that includes some of the 3 or 4 other folks
That's up
that
to
I asked were part of the group, okay?
That'll be up to you, Mr. Chairman, but I'd like to finish what I've started.
You may finish, I'm just telling you.
I need to have what's referred to as a reasonable time if I could have
I
that.
understand that.
And then you'll have to determine whether or not there's any time. But I'll try to respect your wishes.
Thank you.
The fact that, and I'm going to back up one, the fact that a developer buys a piece of property that's troubled, and this is a troubled piece of property from a development point of view. Some of it can't be developed. Does not mean the city of Lake Forest has to award that developer additional density and small lots. That's a problem that rests with the property owner. In fact, here is the historical residential and open space district, and I'm going to read it to you because I don't think you can see it. It says, "It is also the purpose of this section to protect those areas or portions of property identified on the historic residential and open space preservation map as significant parts of the landscape heritage of Lake Forest, such as wetlands, floodplains, poor soils, wetlands, meadows, prairies, savannas, environmentally sensitive and or significant open space." And I won't go on, but I do want to read the last sentence because it's exactly what I just said, but in terms of your own ordinance. "It is not the primary intent of this ordinance to allow density transfers, thus preserving large areas of open space for properties that would not otherwise be buildable, such as those areas listed above in this paragraph." And that's exactly what I said, but in my own words. The question then becomes, how do you determine what the right density is and how do you determine what the actual lot size should be on a piece of property like this? And it's a question asked over and over and over. The answer exists right in your own zoning ordinance. And if you look at section 4623 amendments, and I won't go through all 5, it talks about nearby land use, nearby zoning, and the trend of development. And that didn't just happen to be in there because an attorney wrote it. It's there because that's the LaSalle National Bank case, the prominent case upon which all zoning is decided. So in order to look at this, the subject properties are 5. It's about 300,000 square feet. We have all 1.5 acre zoning around the south, the west, and the north of the property. The trend of development, which means development over a sequence of time, is all single-family large lot. This is as close to a textbook case in zoning as I've ever seen. The precedent is overwhelming, and the subject property as proposed is inconsistent and unreasonable with the nearby land use, the nearby zoning, and the trend of development. We were asked, why can't they have real clusters of development like Conway Farms? The thing with Conway Farms is that it is a total of 400 acres, 200 in the golf course, 200 in housing. It's large enough to create its own internal character. This property is so small, it takes its character externally from the homes that are nearby. So there's a vast difference between those kinds of developments. The comprehensive plan, this is the plan of the city. Again, another legal factor, 1.5 acre lots is recommended in your own comprehensive plan. And finally, if anybody has any question about how we look at established neighborhoods and how they relate to development, the city has its own book, the City of Lake Forest Residential Guidelines. And lastly, I've got 2 more slides, and I might finish 5 minutes early. The summary of land use and zoning, the area is all single-family around it. The lots are 1.5, the zoning is R4 and R5, the comprehensive plan is 1.5, the property drains or accepts the drainage from the surrounding area, and that's why what happens to it is so very critical. It's part of a large environmental corridor that's sensitive. It creates, its character is too small to create its own internal character, and it takes its character from the land around it. The trend is 1.5. The site is excessively dense, and the 1/2 acre lots are too small. There is a happy medium. There is a way this land can be developed, but not in the way that it was proposed to you this evening. And lastly, the means of ingress and egress. Professionally, I have to tell you, one-way in and out is a significant safety hazard. And back in 1992, this subject was discussed on these properties when Stablewood Lane was going in and Oak Knoll was discussed. The police chief wrote a letter in that time frame. The fire chief wrote a letter in that time frame, and your director of planning wrote a letter in that time frame explaining the safety problems. There is a need for further, the developer says he's going to go back and look at things. There's a need for a further means of analysis for ingress and egress and emergency access. And essentially, if I finished on time, our recommendations are very brief. Reduce the number of lots and lot sizes. Preclude disruption to the natural resources, the wetlands, floodplains, and wildlife. Prepare a detailed drainage study. And I think open lands, if they're available to help, would be a good source of information. And lastly, study in greater detail adequate means of ingress and egress. And that concludes my testimony. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We will then go to the people that you're representing. Paul Sundberg. Are you here?
Yeah. Actually, Mr. Commissioner, I'm Dave Downey. I'd like to start. May I?
Are you a client of this gentleman?
No, I'm a local resident.
Yeah, you are a client.
Yes, we are clients of Mr. Krakow.
And your name again?
Dave Downey.
Okay, Dave. And then following Dave will be Paul Sundberg.
Thank you. And I'll be concise, and I've actually prepared a summary of my comments I could hand out afterwards. But again, Dave Downey, my wife Carla, and I have been married for over 30 years, and we have lived almost 29 of those at the northeast corner of Conway and Oak Knoll, 681 Oak Knoll. So when we purchased it, Abington Cams didn't exist, Conway Farms wasn't there, the train station wasn't there, and a number of the homes that have been built south of us have been renovated. So we've seen a lot of work been done. It's been very, very nice. It's been perfect and exactly what we expected. When we purchased the home in 1985, as you may remember, Oak Knoll dead-ended to a guardrail. And we knew that would be developed, and we looked into the zoning, and we felt that it would be developed in the character and of the lot sizes similar to what we have. We have about 1.7 acres on the corner. It was, and it's beautiful. It turned out perfect, and we're very happy with it. And as it was extended, we knew it would be further north, but we could also see how low the property was and how everything drained in that direction, and how the eastern portion of it would be unlikely to be developed. And to continue in the character that we have, felt that it would be similar to Abington Cams development of Phase 2, but of somewhat smaller scale. So there are 5 objections that I have. And a lot of this is from direct observation as we've raised our children and hope to take care of our grandchildren. The first is just the character of the area. I think Mr. Krakauer indicated that we live in an area that we desire because it's quiet, it's safe, a lot of open space, a lot of trees, and all the homes are the same size and quality and character as are the lots. And it's my opinion that by using the historic overlay, it's just a way to bring down the density was essentially intended, R4, down to an R2, which is the 20,000 square foot minimum. The second is the traffic. There are 20 homes from the intersection of Conway and Oak Knoll up through Abington Cams. This would add 17 more, almost double. And we've seen the traffic. We haven't seen a traffic study, but I've watched it for almost 29 years, and there are a lot of cars that come down the road. And at that stop sign, more often than not, it's a rolling stop. And that's a children's bus stop. And as people come down the road and turn left onto Conway or come on Conway and right onto Oak Knoll, they look one way and turn and just go right through. And that's a serious safety hazard for children, pets, walkers, and joggers. I purchased a home because I want to walk to the train. And as you know, Conway is narrow. Every winter, cars will drop off into the ditch. I run, I walk to the train, and when two cars are coming down that road, it's very dangerous, and literally you have to jump into the ditch to avoid being hit. We almost double the traffic that all has to flow out either through Conway or South Oak Knoll. It's even more dangerous. And I'll assure you someone's going to get injured. The last is the construction. When Ray built Abington Cams, he was very respectful. He informed us what was going on, but there was a lot of construction traffic. Road equipment, concrete trucks, graders, and the homes were built over a number of years. So if this plan be approved, we'd be facing the same thing for many, many years. Rather than just the homes built, the number of homes at Abington Cams almost double, and we're facing 5, 6, 10 years worth of construction of big heavy equipment and contractors who are racing to get in and out of the development right at a very critical intersection. Traffic, safety, change in character of the neighborhood are reasons why we object to the plan, and I'd be very happy to hand out my notes if you think that'd be helpful.
Did you submit written testimony, Mr. Downey?
No, I didn't.
Okay. Then if you had given the staff, we'd appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Paul Sundberg. And following Paul will be Kyle Samanzik.
Thank you. I think it goes without saying we support the comments made by Mr. Krakauer, and I'll try to be brief. Many of my points are consistent with what you've heard based on his presentation. By way of background, I'm Paul Sundberg. We live at 530 Oak Knoll, where the Star is. We moved in within the last year, although I was born and raised in Lake Bluff and Lake Forest, and my family, my family, still lives in Lake Forest. My parents still do. We lived in Lincolnshire on a half-acre lot in a ranch house. We decided that with our two children getting older, it made sense to try to get a little bit more space from a lot perspective and house perspective. We very much liked the Lake Forest community. We decided to move back to Lake Forest, and we found this home in this lot, and we were very excited. Acre and a half, over acre and a half gave us more space. A little bit bigger house gave us more space, and the community around it were all lots of similar size. When we were in Lincolnshire, we were on half-acre lots. We were literally right on top of our neighbors. We very much liked the idea of having some space between our neighbors, and we very much liked the idea of being on a cul-de-sac. It was very private. There's a lot of trees, natural beauty associated with this area. And so we were excited to close and move. We were not excited to hear a couple months later of this proposed development. We've spent some time thinking about it, and I'm here to present our concerns. Again, they're very similar to the concerns raised by Mr. Krakauer. We are opposed to the change in zoning and overlay for obvious reasons. it is inconsistent with the character of the neighborhood. I think it is accurate to say that there is not a single lot around this parcel, not including in Conway Farms, but on Stablewood, Oak Knoll, and Abington Cams, that is less than 1.5 acres, and many of them are over 2. We think stacking 17 lots on the dry part of this parcel is inconsistent with the character of the neighborhood, and we think that that's fairly obvious. We also question the rationale for proposing 17 lots. The rationale being that in a traditional R4 zoning, there could be 17 1.5 acre lots. As Mr. Krakauer said, there is significant wetlands and floodplain here, and not being an expert in this area, the math doesn't add up. There simply is not a logical rationale for why Mr. Swanson should be allowed to develop on 17 lots on a small portion of this 30-acre parcel. As Mr. Krakauer mentioned, the Lake Forest zoning ordinance indicates that this was not the intention of the ordinance, that developers should not be able to cluster homes and claim that they're providing open space or contributing open space to the city on land that's otherwise not buildable. And we would propose that the east side of the parcel with the wetlands, with a significant floodplain, is not buildable or is only buildable at extreme cost and effort. And I believe that's cost and effort that Mr. Swanson does not want to and does not plan to undertake. We're definitely concerned about the increase in the water and drainage issues. We've got water problems in our yard. It's taken several months for us to live there to fully appreciate the water problems. But if you look, this is in the upper left-hand corner, this is a picture of the cul-de-sac at the end of Oak Knoll on the north side. On the right-hand side, these are 2 pictures of streams that literally branch out from the concrete in the road and enter going north and going east into this parcel. As Mr. Krakauer said, all of the water flows into the parcel. And then in the lower left-hand corner, it's a little bit harder to see, but this is a large pipe that drains a significant amount of water into the west and south part of the parcel. Suffice it to say that there's a lot of water, and one of Mr. Swanson's proposals is to have an open space of 30 feet between our property and the development. First of all, 30 feet isn't a lot, but the reason why we think that there's a proposal to have this open space is because of these streams and all the water that's contained in there. I don't think it's contributing necessarily anything to us as a neighbor. I think it's a means to an end.
Could you wind up your presentation,
Yes,
please?
sir.
Thank you.
So I'll just highlight briefly, we concur with the information presented on safety concerns. We have 2 small children, 7 and 5. We're worried about all the traffic. And then finally, I'll say we are concerned about what's going to happen to the habitat and all the animals. Another reason why we were very excited to move to this spot was because of the deer and the fox and the coyotes and the birds. We think this is important, and we hope that you won't overlook it. Thank you for the time.
Thank you. Mr. Semanchik. Following him will be Lima Salcius.
Chairman, Commissioner, I appreciate the time. My name's Kyle Smanzik. I live at 1485 Abington Cams, which is not actually the star on the map. It's that star on the map. My wife and I moved there about 18 months ago. I have lived in the area previously. My wife was raised on the North Shore, so we feel like we're familiar with the area. there's three main things I want to cover, and I don't want to repeat information that's already been said because in the value of my time as well as yours, I don't think it's productive. I think the biggest thing I'd like to say is credentially, I've done over about $150 million worth of real estate transaction. I'm 36 years old. I'm a real estate attorney. I've done investment work in stocks, bonds, and everything across the board. I feel like I'm familiar with some of the issues that are currently being discussed. Currently, I'm personally working on development with family on over 225 acres in Wisconsin that is a very environmentally friendly development. Purchased 900 trees last week from the Forestry Department of the state of Wisconsin to plant on the property. The three main concerns that I want to cover so you have my background and understanding are tied to the stormwater, the safety issue for the ingress and egress, and then the impact to the surrounding area from a value standpoint. I think it's probably most important to start, just because the video's up, with the stormwater, and I'll walk you through what the video is showing as it shows. I took this last fall. We also have pictures that we took recently from the past rainfall that we had approximately 3 days ago, which I was out of town for, but my wife is home for. I think what you'll see is essentially in my backyard there is a part of the original development. There is a drainage ditch that runs with an easement across the property that was part of the original design in the area on the way to manage the stormwater going through the property, coming from, through, and to the petitioner's proposed development site. The largest concern is it flows through now and it doesn't actually, it's manageable. So what you'll see is, let me stop because the video's on and point you in the direction. This is out my backyard in the middle of the property looking south. Now it's flipped over to the Abington Cams Road. This is the water flowing under Abington Cams Road. And the camera will pan to the right across the property facing to the south. So that is now to the south. What I would point out is that the drainage ditch, which I think, do we have a picture of on the presentation of existing? The drainage ditch is essentially half of that. It is about 3 feet wide and it runs down, if you're looking at that picture, it runs down the left side of the screen. So all that water on the right side of the screen is currently running over the yard down into what was that small retention pond that you saw at the beginning of the video, and then running under the street into and down between two houses to the proposed development site and the 665 number that Mr. Krakauer pointed out as the lowlands where the water goes. I would say that I'm not here to contest the development of the property. I don't think that contesting the development of the property in any way, shape, or form is productive. I think that the petitioner has bought the property to develop. I do think that it's very important to make sure that it's done commensurate with the city of Lake Forest. It's done commensurate with the code. It's done commensurate with the surrounding area, and it doesn't cause any safety issues. On that note, I'm going to switch into the other two quickly and conclude the presentation. The safety issues that I would touch on from the traffic study standpoint that the petitioner proposed to you. I've read the materials that were submitted. The traffic study was done on January 8th. On January 6th, the National Weather Service reported a historical low temperature at O'Hare Airport of negative 16 degrees. So 2 days after the traffic study was done was the date of the study. I don't think it reflects in 1 day accurate traffic counts going up and down the street in extreme temperatures. I also would say that the traffic going up and down the street in the summer, in my experience of being here so far, is drastically different due to landscaping vehicles. On Conway Farms as it sits right now, single lane streets, very narrow. The landscaping trucks park on the street and put cones around their truck, and it becomes a single lane road. So if you increase the density in the traffic going to that property, there is no traffic. There's a single lane path to go through. So it's a concern to us. I also spent last Saturday looking at the tax parcel map for the city of Lake Forest to see if there was another dead-end street in the city that had a number of lots similar to this. There's currently 20 existing lots built. With the proposed 17, there'd be 37. And I could not find a dead-end street in the city of Lake Forest that had that many lots with a single ingress-egress. So that was a concern to me as well. I think at the end of the day, I'd point out the last piece of the traffic report is we noticed that on top of the when it was done and that it was only done for one day, that there wasn't any searching into the records of traffic incidents on the street. It's my understanding that approximately 3 years ago, one of the school buses actually slid off the street with kids on board into the drainage ditch. And so one of the things that I think would be prudent is to request that part of that traffic study done another day at different times of the year also looked at traffic incidents from police reports to understand further if that actually supports the increased traffic. In the traffic report, the current numbers that are predicted to be future based on the 17 homes added are concluded from the existing numbers. So it's a multiple factor. So if you have a lower multiple factor based on when it was done and it's multiplied out, it's not representative of what I actually think the traffic pattern is in the area. And I don't think, based on neighbors I've spoken to who have lived there longer than us, that they would say the same thing.
Could you conclude, please, or wrap it up? Thank you.
I think, well, lastly, the most important thing that I would say is that we moved to Westlake Forest knowing that the properties in Westlake Forest were larger lots. I think that's something that's known about Westlake Forest. There's a differentiation between the historical side of East Lake Forest and the newer and larger lot sides of Westlake Forest. It's something that we look forward to, being able to have our kids there on the yards playing. And we think that there's a large likelihood that there'll be impact to the value of our property as well as the properties in the neighborhood if half-acre lots are approved. That said, I think that there's a middle ground. I do think that when you look at if what is really trying to be done is there is preservation of land, that going to half-acre to accomplish density of houses to get a better IRR return doesn't work for the neighbors, the city, and the developer, which I think is the goal. I think that there can be a middle ground of acre and a quarter lots that would allow the density the developer needs to conduct his business, the city of Lake Forest in accomplishing what their goals are, and the neighborhood getting more involved and supportive, where I think the petitioner's testimony was there was only one neighbor that currently is supporting in the Oak Knoll area, and there are a lot of neighbors in that area. We think there should be more. I conclude my thoughts.
Very good. Thank you very much. Ms. Celsius? And following her will be Helene Sudak, I believe it is.
Good evening, Commissioners. I can only say to you that I concur with everything that's been presented to you so far, and I will not touch on any of that. However, there is something that directly concerns our property at 1340 Abington Cams and our neighbors, the Cirencione's property at 1320 Abington Cams. Between the two of us, we have a pond that has a culvert which drains into what we call the back 40. Now, we bought the property in 1999. Sure, when there's a large rainfall, we have some water covering the shoreline or however you want to phrase it, and we clean it up, no problem. But in April of 2010, there was a 2.5 official record of rainfall at the Glencoe station. And we were very, very surprised at what happened the next morning when we got up. This is what you see. What you see in the top left-hand corner and the top right-hand corner is the front of our property, the driveway that approaches our house. what you see in the middle and in the bottom left is the backyard property of our neighbors. Their deck, which is their pier on the water, is totally underwater, and if the water would continue, that little black area which you see in back is their pool. The right-hand lower picture is our backyard, and the water, the pond, would be to the right. Now, the trees that you see in there that are close to almost being underwater, I could tell you that that's about 15 feet from the edge of the pond. Now, when we purchased the property back in 1999, we were under the impression that that parcel, which is now part of Mr. Swanson's development, actually belonged to the city of Lake Forest. And we were told that because of the wetlands and the floodplain, that that property would not be developed. Shame on us. We didn't do our due diligence and find out. We trusted what was told to us. However, we went through the back, and the people from whom we bought the home assured us that there has been no problem from when the house was built in 1989 until we purchased it in 1989 to when we purchased it in 1999. In those 10 years, they had no issues with overflow other than the minimal amount when there's a little bit of rainfall. We took that at face value and we accepted it. And then, 11 years later, this is what we see. Well, fortunately, my husband said, you know, the problem must be the culvert that is in the back, which allows drainage from our pond into the area, that 30-acre parcel. He said there must be a problem with that. That's exactly what it was. The silt and the growth that had accumulated did not allow for the drainage of the pond into the area behind us. So we cleaned that out, and then in the spring of 2013 in May, we had another rainfall, which was almost 1/4 of an inch more than what we had seen in the spring of 2010. And you know what? We didn't have this. This is not what occurred. We had the little bit that goes over the side that spills a little bit, but nothing like this in 2010. What does that indicate to us? What that indicates to us is that that culvert is very, very important for the flowage of the water from the pond into that 30-acre parcel. Now, another point, very, very important. This is toward the end of Abington Cams, and what it is to the south side of the property that, there you go, thank you. Do you see where the star is? Okay, that's our property. The property right next to us to the right is the Cirincione property. Right between our property is where the pond is. Okay? And I forgot what I was going to tell you. That's not unusual. When they said, go ahead and speak, Lime, I said, what happens when I forget in the middle of sentences what I wanted to say? The property that Mr. Swanson is going to be developing, if you recall at all, that pond, that detention basin, which is going to be in that southeast corner, okay, right there, do you see where that is in relation to ours and the Cirincione's property? Our pond runs across, it runs right in the area of our border between Cirincione's and us. And what do we have above us? What's going to happen to the culvert? What is going to happen to our pond when we have that detention basin up there? And that detention basin is in the highest portion of the 30 acres. I think you understand our concern, and I really appreciate the opportunity to address you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Let the record show that Mr. Kingsley's request and for Mr. Krakauer, we had 46 minutes of testimony. Let the record show that, please. Okay, next, Helene.
Thank you, Chairman, for letting me speak. My name is Helene Sudak, and I'm a junior at the high school, and currently I'm a resident of Abington Cams. I would just like to start off by quoting from the City of Lake Forest website. It says, in 1861, its founding motto was established. In Latin, it translates to love of science and nature. With its natural beauty, every season, Lake Forest is a remarkable community because of the individuals who call it
Miss,
home.
could you speak more directly into the mic?
Sure.
Thank you very much.
Okay. And I have here a quote from the Tree Preservation and Landscape Ordinance. It states, "The purpose of this ordinance is to preserve trees on both public and private property, and, in the event that tree removal is necessary, to ensure that appropriate replacement trees are planted." And as a community, I believe that we value our nature and trees, since we are named Lake Forest. And speaking from a personal perspective, at any given moment on our property, there are at least like 3 to 7 deer every day, and we've seen coyotes, we've seen rabbits, all sorts of biodiversity. So I'd quickly like to talk about, I think, an overlooked problem, which would be the loss of biodiversity. I'll start with just talking quickly about coyotes. They eat mice, rats, gophers, squirrels, snakes, lizards, frogs, rabbits, and in pairs, small deer. So in the food chain, coyotes control mice, rats, and other rodents, and they scavenge on dead life that otherwise could spread disease. They help control geese in urban areas and on agricultural lands where flocks can forage and destroy young crops. They also kill feral cats, which increase the nesting success for neotropical songbirds. So, by destroying their land, it takes away certain aspects of a food chain, which are very important to the biodiversity and its life. So I'm here to talk about the ecological effects and damage from building. So I'm here to also talk about wetlands. I don't know if many people know about wetlands, but they have accumulation of the organic soils characteristically associated with wetlands, and they can take hundreds or even thousands of years to develop. Widespread land development and clearing have caused increased erosion in uplands areas, leading to increased sedimentation in lowland wetlands. This increased accumulation of sediment can alter the chemical and hydrological regimen of wetlands and the cycling of nutrients in a relatively short time. The environmental benefits of wetlands include water purification, flood protection, shoreline stabilization, groundwater recharge, and stream flow maintenance. Wetlands also provide habitat for fish and wildlife, including endangered species. For water purification, the wetlands protect water quality by trapping sediments and retaining excess nutrients and other pollutants such as heavy metals. These functions are especially important when a wetland is connected to groundwater or surface water, such as rivers and lakes, that are in turn used by humans for drinking, swimming, fishing, or other activities. These same functions are also critical for the fish and other wildlife that inhabit these waters. Migratory birds also depend on wetlands, and many endangered species and threatened animal species require wetlands during the part of their life cycle. Wetland plants and small animals, especially insects, are essential links at the lowest levels of the food chain. A wetlands environment supports these plants and animals, which in turn support the larger animals that feed on them. While an otter or trout may be a more attractive species to protect than some anonymous insect or plant, the latter are no less important in the overall scheme. If we diminish the lowest levels of the food chain, the higher levels will suffer as well. For groundwater, it provides water for drinking, irrigation, and maintenance of stream flow and lake and reservoir levels. I would just like to conclude with a quote I have from Aldo Leopold from the Sand County Almanac that he wrote. "We abuse land because we regard it as a commodity belonging to us. When we see land as a community to which we belong, we may begin to use it with love and respect. There is no other way for land to survive the impact of mechanized man, nor for us to reap from the aesthetic harvest it is capable, under science, of contributing to culture." Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Next speaker, Charles Cretors, or can't quite read the writing. Following him will be Mark Remus. I'm just saying who the next person is to follow you.
I had sent this letter. I'm going to restate the letter that I had sent. It's in your packet. It's a letter to Ms. Cerniak, but I'll read it for what I had here. It says, my wife and I have lived in Lake Forest since 1976. We now live at 1450 Abington Cams Drive. I don't have the map, but Mr. Szymanski, he referred to the water going downhill, going across the street, crossing two properties. Mine's one of them. We back up to the development. We're very concerned about the Oak Knoll Woodlands development that will be next door to our property. When my wife and I built our house in 1988, we knew that that at some time in the future, the property to the north of us would be developed. We thought it would probably be similar to our street. From the information we've received, that is not the case. I am concerned about several items. One is safety and security, and I don't think anybody's talked about that before. And that's at the top of our list. The plan shows a walking path, which will come within a few feet of the back of our lot line. The back of our lot the back of our lot and the proposed development show it to be heavily wooded. There have been a couple of times in the past few years when strangers have come out of the woods behind us looking lost and traveled through our yard to the street. I know this has happened to others in our neighborhood as well. This path will give easy access to the back of our property and our houses to anyone who chooses to park on Oak Knoll. I don't want to put up a fence, but I will if necessary. If you go down the path that starts on Conway Road opposite Stablewood Lane and goes south, you'll see all the houses have installed fences for just that reason. I really object to the walking path. Most problems happen where the police cannot patrol on a regular basis. This gives you walking down the backyards and you give them a road to get in and to get out. Flooding, of course, is the next issue. You saw the pictures of the stream coming off Szymanski's property. Well, it goes right through our property. The back of our lot is very wet right now and has standing water after heavy rain. The new wetlands they propose will not help. Right now, almost the entire property behind us is available to absorb rainwater. I'm concerned about the streets and the houses that will be built. They will not absorb the rainwater, and that will increase the water levels in the low areas significantly. In addition, I've been told that Mr. Swanson's development, Amberley Courts, has caused significant stormwater problems for adjacent land, and that has not been addressed. I'm concerned that the same thing will happen to us. Developers usually move on to the next project as soon as the current project is complete. And lastly, continuity. The development will not be in keeping with the rest of the neighborhood that extends from the railroad tracks to Conway Farms and Everett Road north to Abington Cams. There are literally hundreds of houses in the area, none on a half-acre lot. All lots are a minimum of 1 to 1.5 acre lots. Swanson Development is proposing to put 4,000 square foot houses on 20,000 square foot lots. It'll look awful. The house will cover most of the lot with little yard and not be much different than a city development. We built our house on 1.7 acre lot on Abington Cams because we did not want a city house on a city lot. In short, I realize the property will be developed, but it should be done in a way that is that complements the neighborhood. 1.5 acre lots are appropriate. Half-acre lots are not. I understand that Mr. Swanson has bought some land that is part of a wetland, and he's trying to work around it. He knew what he was buying, and his solution to his problems will cause me problems. And I don't want to make the sacrifice and take on the problems he is creating. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Remus. Following Mr. Remus will be Claire and/or Peter Fry.
Good evening. My name is Mark Remus. My wife and I, Laura, live at 1594 Conway, which is at the very end of Conway Road. We live there with our 2 children. I want to focus my comments on one specific area of concern, and that is traffic safety. Some people have touched upon it. I want to amplify those comments because I don't think enough attention has been paid to this concern. Conway Road is the main feeder road into this area as well as this development. Conway Road is incredibly narrow. There's absolutely no shoulder, there are no sidewalks, and there are steep drop-offs onto the side of the road, as people have commented. In the winter, you literally have cars and trucks falling off the side of the road. In the summer, it is a tremendously active road, because one thing people haven't pointed out, at the end of Conway Road, right off of Waukegan, is the West Lake Forest train station. There's also a Starbucks. There's a number of different retail strip malls, if you want to call them that, and a Sunset Foods. It's a very busy corridor with lots of people coming up and down Conway Road every day. To allow 17 new homes to be built without taking into account how narrow and unsafe Conway Road already is would be reckless and irresponsible. Conway Road during the summer in particular is populated by moms and dads pushing strollers, going for bike rides with their family. You've got people jogging in the morning, in the evening. You've got couples going for walks. You have caddies walking from the train station to Conway Farms Golf Club. The traffic study that I saw for the first time earlier this evening, it's a joke. I can't think of a better word for it, because I've never seen anything so incredibly myopic. They looked at one intersection, the intersection of Oak Knoll and Conway. At no point in time do they give any consideration to the fact that this main artery, Conway Road, cannot accommodate the traffic associated with the construction vehicles as well as residence vehicles once this development is all done. That needs to be taken into account. Secondly, this has been mentioned, but I think it cannot possibly be emphasized enough. This development, the zoning is entirely inconsistent with the surrounding zoning. To have a development of 17 homes that are on lots that are 1/3 the size of the surrounding area creates this island of zoning that is inconsistent with the surrounding area. That type of Frankenstein zoning is exactly the reason why we have this commission, is to prevent that situation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. and Mrs. Fry. Following her will be Dave Carlson.
We sent a letter to the Plan Commission, which you have, so I'm not going to take any more time other than to say Peter and I totally agree with all of our neighbors that have already spoken with the problem of this development going in as planned. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Carlson. Following him will be Dan and/or Kate Dressel.
Mr. Chairman, members of the Plan Commission, thank you for the opportunity to present tonight in opposition to the planned development. Most of the issues that I would have presented have been well articulated by previous speakers. I do bring a little bit of historic perspective to the situation. My wife and I moved into 1566 Conway Road. You get a few years on it, you've got to worry about that. In September 2nd of 1986. I just practiced at Second City yesterday, so anyway. And we were here for the, I'm going to call it a fight, but the debate on the development of the golf course. It took a lot of effort, a lot of animated discussions to get the result of a 1.5 acre zoning on Stablewood. And those of you who were around then, Stablewood actually was planned to go south where the trail is now. That was also going to be 1.5 acres. So that the character of the neighborhood is one of the 2 points I was going to make, and that's been well covered. We just think that half mile east-west and 3/4 mile north-south ought to retain the same acreage zoning that we have currently. The last item that I have is a new one, and that's sewers. We were also here, fought the good fight on converting our septic and sand filter system that was deemed to be not in keeping with the times to a sewer for the 21 houses on Conway and Oak Knoll up to the 610, 611 property and Tanglewood. And I questioned the size of the sewer at the time. I do now, and Kathy's going to look into that. I believe when Abington Cams was put in, there is a sanitary that picks up their property and Stablewood, but I'm not sure. But somewhere it connects east of us, and I'm concerned that 17 more houses is just not going to sit well with the sewer system that's there. Thank you for the opportunity, and that's that.
After Mr. Dressel will be Jerry and/or Marcia Lesser.
My wife and myself, we live at 720 Leland Court, which is right off of Conway. And the only reason I'm speaking is just to concur with everything that's been said. I could certainly go into the detail that other residents have, but I think they all have explained it quite well and adequately. So that's all I want to say.
Okay, thank you. Following Ms. Lesser will be Rebecca Osfor.
Hi, I'm Marcia Lesser. I live on 630 Leland Court, and if you look at that map on Abington Cams, where the cul-de-sac is, it is very close to my house, which is the first one before you hit the cul-de-sac on Leland Court. Only two things. When we were building our house, which we started building in 1997, we were told that we had to put in 5 sewers, which was something we were shocked by. Thank God we had to put in 5 sewers with all these floodplains, and right now I still have water in the back. So things are not going to get better if they build that many homes, and thinking about the foundations with all the concrete, it still has to go somewhere. And the other thing is that it should not ever impact our wildlife in Lake Forest. We lived in Glenview, which is another beautiful village, but it does not compare to Lake Forest. And we lived there for 25 years, and I have never seen the amount of birds that I have in my backyard, or foxes or coyotes. So let's not ruin Lake Forest by doing something that is substandard. Please, thank you.
Thank you. Following the Osfors will be Hal Frankie.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If we could reverse that order, I represent the Asfors.
Okay.
Okay, just to introduce Mrs. Asfor, and then I'll
Please
turn
proceed.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. My name is Hal Frank. I'm an attorney with the law firm of Meltzer, Patil, and Stell. And as I just indicated, I've been retained by the Asfors to consider and protect their interests with respect to this development. Before I provide the remarks that I'd like to provide this evening, I asked Mrs. Asfor to introduce herself and her property to all of you, and I wanted to let you know that Mr. Asfor is traveling out of town on business, so she will speak for the family and then turn the floor back to me. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Rebecca Asfor, and I, along with my husband Charlie, own that awkward-shaped property right in the middle of this development. And I just want to talk about a couple of things that are specific to my property. The first being the walking trail, and I'm glad that someone talked about the safety of the walking trail, because as it stands now, that trail is particularly close to my house, and you did see a picture of my home before, and it is basically all windows. And if you stand anywhere near that pond, you can see straight into any of the bedrooms, any of the, the dining room, the living room, any of the rooms in the home. And I have 2 kids at home, and it's just a little, or not a little, it's particularly unsafe to have strangers walking around a path in our front yard, and in the back there's supposed to be a path. And those are 2 things that we are concerned about. The second is the driveway that we currently have. It extends from our house onto Stablewood Lane. At one point, I think our driveway was meant to be rerouted into the new neighborhood, and I just want to reiterate that we would like to maintain our current driveway onto Stablewood Lane because we believe that our home draws its character from that street. And I'll turn it over to my lawyer now, and he can be more official.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rebecca. Just to follow up on what Rebecca said, as she indicated, the asked for is property is the unique parcel that Kathy Cerniak talked about at the very beginning of the presentation that is in the upper northwest corner of the subject property. And I wanted to let you know that Mr. Swanson and his attorney have been communicating, directly with the asked fors for a very long period of time over the last several months. They have submitted concept plans to our clients, and they have tried to keep our clients informed and in the loop on this. And as Rebecca just said, some of the initial plan, I would say, that was presented to our clients contemplated a relocation of the driveway that Rebecca asked for, was just talking about, that the asked for is currently have, that goes over the subject property, and then it connects to Stablewood Lane. I don't have a laser pointer, but if you look there, you can see there's a little kind of notch out that there's a specific easement parcel that is the final connecting link, if you will, to Stablewood Lane. And that is a separate easement from a series of easements that create the S4's driveway, which runs just south of that pond up in the northwest corner of the property. So initially, one of the plans that, or the plan that was presented to the S4s showed a relocation of that driveway, more or less the elimination of that easement connection to Stablewood Drive, and a direct connection to what would be then a new cul-de-sac for this development. And I know you said at the beginning of the meeting that the two lawyers that spoke, Mr. Iden and Mr. Kingsley, that you're going to address legal issues in a separate meeting perhaps. I want you to know that this is one legal issue that came up very early on that I think we've now resolved. We took a position that the way the development was being proposed, it would not eliminate that easement connection to Stablewood Lane. That was a different position that was being presented at the time by Mr. Iden. I believe now he agrees with our position and that legal issue is resolved and off the table. Again, the applicant was very good and responsive in working with our clients on that issue, and so the current plan does not show a connection to the proposed new cul-de-sac. And I believe the applicant was sensitive to what Mrs. Asford just said, that they believe the character of their property is derived from the surrounding properties on Stablewood Lane and to the north. So they've been very responsive in that respect. The other issue that we've raised that I think we're still not on the same page with is that pond area that Mrs. Asford just referred to. Their house fronts that pond. They have a lot of front windows, and they are concerned about the privacy. So similar to the comment that the gentleman made about the walking path being close to his backyard, if a plan proceeds, they would request that that path be eliminated around the pond for the same reasons that you heard just a few moments ago. And I don't know exactly what the petitioner or the applicant's response to that would be, or what the city's position on that would be, but the ASFORs would request that path be eliminated. We've also talked to Mr. Swanson and his attorney about putting the ASFORs in a position where that area would be basically restricted for any future development, but also carved out for exclusive use by the ASFORs, because it is effectively like their front yard, with the understanding that they would maintain it, they would do everything, and that it would be maintained as a pond. That has not been fully resolved yet, but I think we're pretty close, we, the ASFORs, and the applicants, to being on the same page on that issue. The other, another issue that's been discussed is, again, that driveway separates the pond area. This is the driveway that the Asfors and their guests use to go in and out of their property to Stablewood Lane. That driveway is just to the south of the pond and just to the north of some of the proposed homes in the subdivision, the proposed subdivision. And our client has requested both for their benefit, our clients have requested both for their benefit and the benefit of future occupants of those homes, that more and improved landscaping be put in that area for screening purposes. And again, this is one of the items where the applicant has been very responsive and agreeable to working with us and working with the city to enhance that landscaping. As that walking path or trail goes on to the east, it again becomes somewhat close, approaches our client's property. We have asked Mr. Swanson to consider locating that path as far away from the Asfors property as possible and adding additional landscaping to that area. Again, very similar to the request you heard from the other gentleman. And again, Mr. Iden and Mr. Swanson have been very responsive to that and very agreeable to that. I think we have asked the applicant to also confirm that that driveway easement I referred to before would remain in place as the access point for the Asfors property, and that it be dedicated for exclusive use. You know, and I think the applicant is in agreement with that concept. Another issue that's come up in our ongoing discussions with the applicant is that apparently there are some improvements at the south end of the Asfors property that technically encroach onto the proposed development property. And there were some discussions about them granting, the developer granting an easement to our client so that they weren't considered encroaching. Now that we've even gone beyond that discussion to say, because they're not significant areas, that the developer would consider deeding those little areas to our client so that they're not encroaching anymore and we don't have to deal with easement issues. So I think that that's the essential terms of discussions that we've had with Mr. Iden and Mr. Swanson. There are some ancillary items that we've discussed that don't necessarily pertain to land use or land planning here. I'd be happy to summarize all this. I don't have it. We have not submitted this to you in writing. I'd be happy to do that after this evening as the discussions are ongoing, as city staff, Kathy indicated, or your review and her review is ongoing. You know, I would tell you, I would like to say that, you know, as one of the most proximate neighbors here, the applicant, Mr. Swanson, and his attorney, Mr. Iden, as I said at the beginning, have been very willing to talk to us. They've talked to us on repeated occasion. They've met with us, and as you just heard, they've been very responsive to a number of concerns. So the Asfors are not opposed to the request to rezone to R4. Similar to what Kathy Cerniak said, we think it's reasonable. That's on the request itself for rezoning. I'm not commenting on the plan, which everybody seems to, you know, acknowledge is still being reviewed, considered, studies are still coming in. But, you know, we agree with Kathy Cerniak that the request for rezoning to R4 is not unreasonable and would support that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And you can get those written comments to Ms. Cerniak.
I will do that.
Thank you. Next person is Irene Sudak.
Thank you, Chairman and committee. I will be brief. I would like to request that everyone present who is in the neighborhood we're talking about and not in favor of this, please stand. And I am delighted to meet my neighbors. We live at 1420 Abington Cams. We have only lived here for a few years, but I very much appreciate the effort that everyone has come out to express their views. I think it's been certainly a very productive conversation. Thank you. What I would like to also say, just to add a few more comments that at least I would like to have addressed in the dialogue. We all found the January 8th traffic study an interesting date to use as an indication of the traffic for the area. I would like to point out that in the summertime, in particular, a number of the households have students and children who are young adults who are away at college in January and February and March, but are home in the summer. They're working, they're with their family, they have cars and they drive. So what we're talking about is a traffic study at, I think it was suggested, different times of the year to understand the amount of traffic that we all see at certainly as the weather gets warmer. The other question that I would like to have answered is why, with all of the security issues or safety issues mentioned with only one egress and ingress, why it wasn't considered to connect to Stablewood Lane as an outlet that would at least reduce it to 1 point. I believe I recall in the opening statements that Stablewood Lane was satisfied with the request for the rezoning, and it just seems sort of obvious that perhaps if they are not going to be connected, that they would then appreciate that, okay, this is fair. But it seems as though it's sort of obvious that at least having that complete connection would potentially balance out the traffic. So I guess I'd like to understand better why connecting to Stablewood Lane was not part of the proposal. And of course, I want to reiterate all the other comments with regard to the quarter acres. I have had the pleasure of moving for work every 5 years, and I have lived in lots of different developments, and I have always seen that when there are build-outs of property like this, that it continues to reflect the nature of the environment. We're talking of different parts of the country. And so that this, again, would really, to have half-acre lots with houses and say that they are similar in value or going to allow our houses to appreciate in value because they're there, I'm having a little trouble connecting all those dots. So again, I know it's been a long evening and you've listened to a lot of comments, but again, I'd just like to express that a lot more work should go into this before a decision is made. Thank you.
Agreed. Thank you. That's all the registration slips we have. Is there anyone else who did not fill out a slip who wishes to testify? Provide public comment. Could you please give us your name and address, please?
My name is Glenn Rhines. I live at 1490 Abington Cams. I own a property right before the entrance to the proposed subdivision. And I knew at the time when I bought the property that someday that cul-de-sac may be opened up and new homes may be put in there. I was actually excited to hear that Rick Swanson was involved in this development because of his previous developments and his attention to detail. Rick actually designed my own home in 1989. So I hope you'll consider that his reputation will speak for itself. So that's all I have to say.
Okay. Anyone else? Your name and address, please.
My name's Vince Conroy. I live at 790 Oak Knoll, Lake Forest. I've lived there for 38 years, probably longer than most folks in this room. The one thing I want to agree with is that what everybody has just said about this property and the density. I suggest or I recommend that you guys on the board get your rubber boots on and take a walk. Walk around the property. Walk around the neighborhood. Actually see what you're going to talk about and what you're voting on. Something's going to happen there one way or the other. You're going to build homes, but how about it fits? I have nothing against anybody building a house. But what I do have is taking advantage of a situation. To make a profit is a good thing. To make a profit at the expense of others is not a good thing. Thank you.
Thank you. Last call.
Hi, can you hear me? I have to go a little higher. My name is Jill Glicksberg. I probably know 98% of the people here in the room. My husband Bruce and I, we live on the corner of Conway and Oak Knoll, right across from Dave and Carla Downey. We're the two blonde bookends. We're the archway to the area where we're talking about. I own a 100-pound yellow Labrador, and I just want to extend the offer. If you ever walk that area, come walk with me on Conway or even Oak Knoll in either direction, because she's old, she's slow, I love my dog. I walk the roads. Many times we've ended up in the ditch, and that's not even summer hours with all the landscaping trucks. And also I want you to consider in 2015 how we might have the BMW Conway Championship. And please, for your safety, come take the walk before that and before all the landscaping trucks come too. But I extend the offer to come take a walk with the dog and I, but to also be forewarned, you might become a front hood ornament a couple times because it's extremely dangerous. And there's also bicyclists, and in the summer I see a lot of rollerbladers, and so I invite you to come participate. We have a wonderful community, and by putting this 17 homes addition is going to destroy it. So please consider this before you make any decisions. And the offer's always open to walk with.
Okay, thank
Thanks.
you. We've got this lady, we got two more back here, and then we'll come to you, okay? And then to the fourth person in the back.
I thank you for taking the time to listen to what I have to say. I have not familiarized myself completely with what is taking place, but I'm going to address what Jill Glicksberg said.
Could you give us your name and address?
My name is Michelle Kostakis. I live at 612 Oak Knoll Drive. I actually have been a part of the traffic issue. My mother-in-law was hit at the rolling stop sign at Conway and Oak Knoll, because it is very true that people do not stop there. They roll right through. They do not look all different ways. I am one to be walking late at night, but with a flashlight. I have had the horrible experience of having to jump into the ditch because of the traffic and the street, which everyone has already talked about, being so narrow. The main concern that just occurred to me tonight was what people have talked about. In the summer, right now, we have the landscapers with the cones all around them. I believe the speed limit on Conway is 20 miles per hour. 25. I would say I go 2 to 3 miles an hour because there can be two landscaping trucks on the road back to back. I literally cannot see around unless I am basically barely going 1 mile an hour if there is any oncoming traffic. I have seen several, as everybody's already mentioned, cars, SUVs in the ditches. Add to this construction, concrete, whatever would be necessary to build anything. I'm not interested in 1 acre sites, 1.5 acre sites. I bought my house versus Arbor Ridge because Arbor Ridge were 1/2 acre lots. I sit on over 1.5 acres, which is a comment that many people have made. But I would like to say that between Everett and Conway on Oak Knoll, those lots are 2 acres or larger. So if we compare 2 acres to 1/2 acre, there's absolutely no comparison. But as Jill already alluded to, take a walk around the area. The number of bicyclists, as that sport has become more popular, has increased. The number of children in the neighborhood has increased. The number of grandparents coming to visit, children home from school in the summer. I mean, I moved there 10 years ago, and there was very little traffic. And my in-laws happened to have lived in the area before Abington Cams existed. And that was an eyesore, but it's turned out to be okay because it was in keeping with the neighborhood. 1.5 acre lots, not, as my husband said before I came here tonight, it's about money. And that, as the other gentleman said, it's someone else's expense. Who wins? No one wins. The city doesn't win. The people don't win. The only person who wins is Rick Swanson, and I am totally opposed to this. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Hi, Lisa Cant, 400 Stablewood. I just wanted to clear up a couple of misconceptions. Stablewood Lane is a private road. The Aspors at this point do not pay for the maintenance of the road that they have access to. The residents pay at least $2,000 a year for road maintenance, resurfacing, and also the removal of snow and ice from the road, as well as landscaping. And we would hope that if the city intends to make that access or egress from this project, that they would then consider making Stablewood Lane a public street, which was maintained by the city. Just to bring that up, and I wanted to make it clear to the audience because I don't think they realize it. And the other thing is we have not officially taken any position on the project. We wanted to give the Oak Knoll residents, on the Abington Cams residents, an opportunity to speak and get all the issues on the table before we further discuss the project. Thank you.
Okay.
Hello, Mr. Chairman and the board. My name is Claire Tracy, 1381 Conway Road. One item I wanted to bring up, I concur with all my residents. I object personally to the planned development also. I think one thing as I look at this proposed development at the 1/2 acre lot size per house, you can imagine that if it's a half acre, that's going to appeal to a lot of family and family owners potentially that are also going to have kids. You will also notice that the high school is right to the right upper end of the property. Just a scenario or question to the board. Do you envisage that with a property size of 17 homes in that small lot area, that you're going to have a chance at any potential that kids would use the walking path that was presented on the drawing earlier in the presentation to go across the railroad, the railroad station road, to go across to the high school? That to me is a high risk, it's a high possibility, and it would be a possibility that we'd all have to live with if we agree to this planned permission. Thank you.
Thank you. I think there was one person near the back of the, yes, ma'am, please come up.
Good evening. I have laryngitis. For that, I apologize. My name is Lauren Sunberg, and I live at 530 Oak Knoll Drive, which is...
Could you pull the mic down?
Sure.
There we go.
So
Thank you.
I'm carrying this just in case I have a coughing fit, so I apologize. I live at 530 Oak Knoll with my husband and 2 small children who are 5 and 7. right off the bat, I want to say, if you see, I'm at the west side of the cul-de-sac there at the end of Oak Knoll, and having a walking path go directly next to our property back there is for the same reasons Rebecca pointed out, is a safety issue for me. Right now, I can tell my kids they can go in the backyard and play. I wouldn't feel comfortable doing that if there was a walking path with people walking. I think it would be as close as 50 feet away from our property line. Not even our house, it would be less than that. I also want to address the open space that is supposed to be this buffer for us. It's very wet. As my husband mentioned, there's a pipe that drains and runs into the subject property and runs down towards the cul-de-sac to the east. So that area is very wet, and I believe it needs the drainage to be kept sound and not have a walking path that may be elevated put in there as well. The next issue I wanted to address is this, the R4 conventional plan, I'll call it. Alan, is there any way you can show the overlay of the wetlands? So I didn't understand a whole lot about wetlands and floodplain. When we bought the property, we, as Lima represented, we were told, oh, that property probably will not be developed because it's very wet and there are a lot of floodplains. And that's true. It is very wet and there are a lot of floodplains. Most significantly is a wetland that is very large on the east side. It's wetland number 1, and I believe it's Hay and Associates report, and it is a high quality wetland. And why that is important, I believe, is that, as you know, the Lake County Stormwater Commission has jurisdiction over these wetlands, and what? Yeah, that huge, and it goes down. That huge black piece there is the high-quality wetland. Now, Mr. Swanson put up that he had spoken with Lake County Stormwater and that they, I don't know the exact words, but they agreed with restoring the wetlands or something. And I'm sure they did. But one thing they made clear to me is they wouldn't look at any plan until it's approved by you. So I don't think they gave any specific response to Mr. Swanson other than they would probably like the wetlands preserved. But interestingly, I also found out that on the map that has been provided by Hay for the R4, it says all wetlands mitigated off-site. Well, what I learned is they have to go to a bank, and there's only one bank in the North Chicago branch watershed. Apparently it's Atkinson Branch Bank. And they have to go there, and they have to actually buy replacement wetlands. For high quality, they have to buy 3 acres of wetlands at the bank for every 1 acre that they impact, so to speak. And I called the Atkinson Bank, and it's $80 an acre, or $80,000 an acre. And that wetland 1, that high quality wetland, is 4 acres. So that would be 4 times 80? Okay, 3. That much. A lot of money, I would say. The other thing I found out is that those credits are not readily available. In fact, I mean, I called a few weeks ago, there was less than 1 acre available. And right now there are no credits available. And it's an actual bank that has to be grown in, and the Army Corps of Engineers comes out and says to them when their wetlands can be then released for credits. It seems like it's a timely process. So, and then there is something else called the Wetland Restoration Fund for the North Branch Chicago River that's also administered by Lake County. And for anything that's over 1/10 of an acre, you're required to mitigate. So if you impact 1/10 of an acre or greater of a wetland, you're required to make a fee in lieu payment to stormwater management. And I guess that's the last ditch effort if there's no credits. And from what I understand for high quality, it could be $129,000 an acre. And I think the ratio is 3 to 1 for high quality, 1.5 to a regular, which all the other wetlands are, a regular wetland. So my point is, when we're looking at this R4 conventional plan and apparently looking at it to see what number lots can be clustered over on the dry side, on our side of the property by Mr. Swanson. He's taking this plan and he's selling it like it's actually feasible. And I've got to say, I found out he paid $2.4 million for the property. I don't think he wants to spend all that money on wetland credits and mitigation when he says himself, all of them have to be mitigated off-site. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else who has not spoken that wishes to? Yes, please.
My name is Cynthia Tobin. I live at 1421 Conway Road. Just 2 points. One is back to the traffic and the safety on Conway Road. Like other people who spoke before me, I do invite you to walk on there because they're not joking when they say you do have to jump in the ditch when 2 cars pass. As an adult, I don't even feel comfortable getting my mail. When there are 2 cars coming, I have to wait before I can go to the end of my driveway. With our 2 small children, I don't even let them go beyond a certain point in our driveway because I'm too concerned with all the traffic that already exists on Conway Road that an accident could occur. Secondly, I'm naive to this and I kind of have a question. So if it's R5 zoning now and they're requesting R4 zoning, isn't R4 zoning 1 house to every 60,000 square feet? Is that right? But then I don't get it because these homes are 1 house to 20,000 square foot lots, right? Is that correct? Is anyone able to answer my question, or is that not how a public hearing works? So is R4 zoning 1 house per 60,000 square feet? You probably know, Rick.
It's a question that will be addressed.
I mean, that's a question that I think would get on our list to be able to respond.
Okay, well then I guess then my follow-up to that is, on Conway Road, our house is on a 1.9 acre lot, and like many people here, they're on 1.5 acre lots or maybe up to 2 acres, maybe even more. If this is granted, can we subdivide our lots into half-acre lots and then put, like I could probably put 3 homes on my 1.9 acres?
Ma'am, I don't believe that's germane to the petition before us. I mean, I think you could get an answer from that by calling Ms. Zerniak.
Zerniak, okay,
Sure.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Hi, I'm Susan Melanik. I live at 1530 Stablewood Lane. And we just wanted to reiterate our concerns about the drainage. That creek everybody's talking about drains right into our land, which is Mr. Swanson's former home. And also about the safety for children. During the school year, we have 3 children. They take the bus to school. We were very successful in getting District 67 to provide a short bus so our daughter could be picked up at the cul-de-sac on Stablewood Lane, which is 6/10 of a mile from the bus stop at Conway Road and Oak Knoll. We were unsuccessful in getting District 115, so our son, who is in high school, must walk to the bus stop or we must drive him. There are no sidewalks on Stablewood. There are no sidewalks on Conway. I have real concerns about adding 17 homes and potentially children from those homes to walk to that bus stop. As people have said, you know, people roll through those stop signs all the time. In terms of cul-de-sacs, if you are going to put cul-de-sacs in the subdivision, I think they should be large enough to accommodate school buses because I have friends of my children who live closer to the schools than we live from the bus stop, and they get picked up. And, you know, there are a lot of landscapers, there are a lot of contractors. It's a real hazard for our children, and I think it's something the city should really consider. Thank you.
Okay. I don't see anybody else making a move to speak. So because of that, I think I would like to just move on to the next part of our agenda. The public hearing will continue to be open. We will move at the conclusion of this evening's activity to continue the public hearing. So if anybody was here tonight that wasn't sure whether or not he or she wishes to testify, you will have ample opportunity in the future. Can I just ask one question?
So the people are aware when to come back. Will it be stated later on tonight what that date will be, or?
I don't think a date has been set, but go ahead, Kathy.
Additional public notice will be sent out. If you did not receive direct mailed notice, please, there should be a sheet at the back, or if you signed up on one of those. If you did not receive direct mailed notice, leave us your address. We'll make sure that you get that.
Thank you.
Okay. You want to take a break?
Yes.
Okay. We're going to take a 5-minute recess to stretch and get some air. Back here at 8:47. You almost have to be a little bit.
What is it?
Okay, we're going to return to our agenda.
No, 211 left, though, in the third.
Surprising. Okay. Next on our agenda is opportunity for cross-examination, and we have 4 requests to cross-examine. Kyle Samanchek, Christine Samanchek. Who did you wish to cross-examine? No, I want you to let us know, first of all, who you wish to cross-examine.
Yeah. At this time, I do not actually want to cross-examine. I think the Planning Commission has been presented with a lot of information that you guys want to answer some questions, ask some questions, so we're not.
Okay. Does that hold true of Christine as well?
Yeah, pardon my interruption. That includes Christine, my wife.
Okay, thank you very much. Paul Sundberg and Lauren Sundberg have indicated a request to cross-examine. Are they still here?
Yeah, the jury, no, we don't have any intention of cross-examining right now.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll hold these, we can hold these for, or will they have to request?
They should be resubmitted for the next.
Okay, you'll have to
meeting.
resubmit the next time we get together, okay? Okay, staff response to public testimony?
As I noted at the beginning, I'm not prepared to provide extensive responses to the questions raised. Certainly, there were questions about the appropriateness of the zoning, questions about the overlay district. We will talk about the difference between permitted density and lot size as we come back. I think there was some confusion about that. We heard questions about the potential for connection to Stablewood. We can talk through the fact that that is a private road and the city does not have jurisdiction over that. And that in fact that road was not built to city standards. We certainly heard questions about traffic in the larger area. We heard questions about the narrowness and the drainage ditches along Conway Road. We will respond to that. We will talk with certainly engineering has already been involved in the review and they will continue to be involved in the review. We will also talk with public safety staff. We will bring back to you more details on explanation of the stormwater management plan, wetlands, how the floodplain comes into play. We will also provide an analysis of the proposed conventional subdivision plan and look at whether that 17 lot number is a reasonable number and explain, and if so, explain how we've come up with that conclusion. I have taken extensive notes and I'm sure my quick summary didn't hit everything, but we will certainly from the staff perspective provide responses. We will also be in communication with the petitioner and talk through issues and come back to you with responses.
If you could add to that list as to whether or not what Mr. Krakauer called for in terms of a I forget what, a stormwater plan, specifically the plan that would be required, or that he feels would be required, whether or not that's
an area drainage plan. I
yes,
think was
whatever
the
it
analysis.
was.
We will
okay.
Get our engineering staff's opinion
Very
on that.
good.
Could I add to that list
Sure.
of things too, Kathy? Is it possible, and I don't mean to create a lot of work for you, but this overlay district, I think, is a great tool when used, optimally. Are there some examples in town that maybe you could show us diagrammatically that have instances where we have, say, a high degree of success with the overlay? The relationship of the spaces that are created. I think Open Lands has done a few of them where they take a common area in the middle and they ring it around with the houses. So that we get an idea of what the good environment is that the overlay will lead to. And not just for the sake of the open land that may be a wetland, but for the actual housing, the built environment. I think that should probably be a good quality environment too, not that it gets compressed to us just at the service of preserving some other part of the site.
We will bring that, yes.
Okay. Okay, the next opportunity we have is for petitioner rebuttal.
Gentlemen and Kathy, as I indicated at the beginning of the proceedings, what we would like to do in the form of rebuttal or even better refinement and explanation would be to take all of our notes home, and I have a lot of notes, actually the pen ran out, and try to determine all of the points that were made, traffic, drainage, Conway, you name it, and provide a coherent response to each of the points, not in duplicate, of course, and have support for those so that it's much more efficient for your review and a lot more organized and easy to understand. So I would undertake to do that, and then Kathy, if you want to compare notes with me, maybe I have something you don't have, or vice versa. We'll try to cover all the issues and have appropriate responses for them.
Very good.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Rick, did you wish to make any comments?
Mr. Chairman, members of the Plan Commission, my comments will be very brief. I think Mr. Iden really addressed what we wanted to accomplish tonight. I do want to let you know that I also took extensive notes, and I've been here before. Every development I've ever done, I can't say it was to this extent, but I've had opposition. And I would add that when we did Everett Farm, we had the same kind of comments. As you can imagine as board members, I'm sure the three things you hear consistently on every project are drainage, traffic, and impact of values. We know it's incumbent upon us to prove that wrong. I did hear some very, very good comments here tonight, and the purpose of this process is to actually take all that in and perhaps even engage some direct dialogue. I want this board to know that we are going to make that effort to do that, as we've done in the past successfully. So we thank you for your time tonight. We thank you for your patience, especially in light of the fact that this is a twofer for you this week. And we look forward to coming back to you very soon. Thank you again.
Okay. I would just last ask of commissioners if there's any initial impression, reaction, whatever that you may have that you would like to have Kathy pay particular attention to as she...
I have one general overriding explanation I would request of staff, or clarification, and that relates to the ordinance and the overlay district. That last sentence Mr. Krakauer put up, stating that it is not the intent of the ordinance to promote density transfer. I'd like to be persuaded that that is not the case here, if possible.
Okay. Anything else?
I think it might be helpful if we could do an informal survey of safety issues that have resulted from the existence of walking paths throughout the city, especially around open lands. And there may also be some interesting facts to be gleaned by that research in terms of their proximity to private property, versus being set inside the property or inside the open lands more specifically. So I'd love to have some answers to those questions, because they'll certainly come up again in public testimony. And I would share Commissioner Culbertson's concern about the density issue. I'm having a bit of a hard time to understanding how the application of the overlay district would allow for lots that are at the very least a third the size of everything surrounding the property. So I don't believe the surrounding properties have informed the development to the extent that I'm comfortable yet.
Okay. And I have a question too of petitioner, and that is, that came to mind as people testified, and I don't expect an answer tonight, and that is the walking trail on the perimeter of the proposed development, is that essential? Okay. Okay. Anything further?
Mike, just the 5 that I had overall: stormwater, safety and traffic, character and density, wildlife, walking path and safety. Those are the 5 I came away with.
Yep. Okay. A motion to continue this item would be in order.
So moved.
Second.
Is that not correct?
I missed who, I got the second. Who made the motion?
Jeff.
Thank you.
That the public hearing would be continued, that the petitioner and Kathy will put together a list of issues, and in addition to that, petitioner will also have communications with or interactions with those who attended the public hearing, and then, as I understand it, we don't have a date certain as to when we will next meet to continue the public hearing and the other meeting procedures that we have. So, all those in favor of the motion to continue, say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed, no. The matter is continued.
Thank you.
Okay, our next item is information and opening of a public hearing considering a code amendment relating to medical cannabis dispensaries and cultivation centers in response to recent state legislation. Kathy, you've prepared a staff report. Would you like to briefly summarize or take
Sure.
whatever time you need?
In August of 2013, the state legislature did approve the Compassionate Cannabis Use Act. That act essentially authorized marijuana dispensaries and cultivation centers, areas where they're grown and areas where prescriptions could be filled. They authorized those in the state of Illinois. The state legislature put some limits on where those could be located and the total number that could be located in the state, and they preempted cities or counties from prohibiting these facilities from locating within any community or county boundary. Last fall, along with about 16 other communities and Lake County, there was a staff task force where we spent a lot of time trying to understand the legislation and then talking through restrictions that might be imposed locally that could be respectful and consistent with the state legislature, but also give the communities a little bit more control. One of the requirements at the state level is that neither of these facilities are permitted within residential zoning districts. For Lake Forest, that really is very significant. Our community is practically completely zoned for residential uses. And then the state layered on top of that required distances from certain uses, schools, daycares, and all of those layers together make it unlikely that some of these uses will be located in certain communities. Despite that, we took this issue to the city's legal committee, and the legal committee did suggest that in the event that we do get a request for this type of use, we should have a process in place. They suggested that our code amendment make dispensaries and cultivation centers special uses in the city code. The city has used the special use permit tool for many uses, for churches, for schools, for private clubs, Lake Forest College, the hospital. So it is a way that the city has worked with its residential zoning and provided an opportunity for public hearings, public debate on any such uses. So the recommendation before you is that you direct staff to prepare a code amendment that would make these types of uses special uses, and that in addition to the standard criteria for special uses that talk about compatibility, limiting congestion, availability of utilities, protection of public welfare, that we also look at some additional criteria that might recognize that these uses, if they were to come in here, might be appropriately regulated from a signage perspective to a greater extent than our code currently does. And that we look at some other issues such as perhaps isolating parking, talk about whether this should be a standalone use or a use that's located near other types of uses. So I did list a few of those ideas in the staff report, and we're here tonight really to get direction from you. Do you support the approach of making these uses a special use permit as opposed to a use that would be permitted outright in certain zoning districts? And if so, would you like to direct staff to come back to you with some specially crafted criteria that speak directly to these uses? So we're looking for a recommendation tonight. Next step would be preparation of the code language to be brought back before you for an official public hearing.
Are you recommending an either or both of those two things?
The staff recommendation is that the use be a special use permit, and that in addition to the standard criteria, we prepare special criteria for you to consider.
Before you would draft an ordinance?
With your direction tonight, we will draft the ordinance, and we actually have some model language from working with that task force that other communities have used, so we're not going at this alone, but just wanted to get your general sense of whether that's a direction you would support.
I'm seeing nods of everyone here, so.
Any other criteria? I now have the criteria in front of me, but they were in your staff report. Anything that comes to mind that we're missing that you'd like to see us address specifically?
The cultivation areas, I was interested in maybe having us focus on for a second, or maybe in your further work. You know, as a planning commission, I would feel that we were somehow remiss in our duties if I'm going to be driving down Waukegan Road someday and see a big field of cannabis with a really big high barbed wire fence around it with all this signage prohibiting trespassing, and just thinking that somehow that takes the wind out of maybe what we're trying to create as far as the visual character of the community. And is that something we can put, I don't know if you say, can we hide all this stuff, but if someone decided to put in, you know, on one of our fields where we normally see winter wheat or alfalfa growing, I don't know, I guess I'm troubled by that being visually a part of our landscape.
We can certainly look at that issue. Screening, either restrictions on screening or the type of screening.
Does the act require that we allow for cultivation discussions and considerations the same way we would a dispensary? Can we prohibit?
The act establishes greater limitations on where cultivation centers could be located, and again, between the residential zoning pattern and the required distances, you would be hard pressed to find a location within the city that it would be permitted. So this is really.
What about a 20-acre estate?
Yeah.
That's residential, though.
Neither of the facilities can be located within a residential zoning district.
Okay.
And then in addition to that,
okay,
they can't be located within certain distances which are noted in the staff report.
Are there any agriculturally zoned districts in Lake Forest?
No.
Oh, they all have a residential overlay attached to them then?
Correct.
And you could deny the special use under any circumstance, couldn't you?
If it didn't meet the criteria.
That's why we need the criteria. Yeah. So it isn't arbitrary and capricious.
Right. Well said.
Okay.
Is it unreasonable to say that if something does fall in the zoning that allows it, that it needs to be indoors for cultivation, not allow outdoor cultivation?
I can make a note to review that. I'll need to refer back to the act.
Oh, this is. this is really a reach, but White Stable Vineyards,
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. What if they take the
what if they say, forget the vines?
But it's residential.
That property is zoned residential.
It is.
So there can't be any spot rezoning for agriculture that wouldn't have to undergo a close review and,
Be a rezone.
A request for rezoning would come before the Plan Commission.
okay, all right.
And we could apply then the state statutory criteria.
For rezoning, correct, for zone changes.
Do you require a motion to,
No.
you
but-
draft some
but
language for our review?
I hear direction to draft some language. Again, I'll work closely with the work that came out of the task force and the city attorney, and parallel some of what we're seeing in other communities.
So we have unanimous consent that you proceed as recommended.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, any public testimony on non-agenda items? I don't see anybody here. Is there anybody else who I don't see that wishes to comment? Additional information from staff?
Nothing further.
Did you want to mention about the August? Or do you want to just proceed to?
We may be looking, I think you right now have an August meeting on your calendar. That date may not work, and we may pull you for a different date for that August meeting.
Okay, seeing no other business before us, motion to adjourn would be in order.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded at 9:10 PM that we adjourn.
It was a sprint.
Say aye.
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 Opposed, no. Motion carries. We are adjourned. 3 hours, 2 hours.